from 12 noon until 1 p.m. asking the question of what happened here. And today the question that we're asking is, what happened with Mount Vernon's finances? We have a situation where the finances, or at least a component of the finances, were recently released, and we are going to talk about it with our special guest, who is a regular every third Wednesday of the month, Charles Knapp, former AUSA, also former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney, but also the former Inspector General in the city of Mount Vernon. He has written extensively about the issues with the city controller in the past and what's been going on with Mount Vernon's money. Why is it so funny? And now we have a financial reckoning that seems to be among us. And the real question that we're asking is the city broke? If so, why? Was it avoidable? Who knew what, when, why, where, and how? And we're going to get to these questions and issues. You can call in at 914-636-0110. Again, that phone number is 914-636-0110. Now, I bring to you Mr. Knapp.
Good afternoon, Mayor. It's always good to be here.
Thank you for joining again and sharing your time to be with us and talk about some of these important issues. Just jump right into it. Were you surprised with Comptroller Morton's sobering report where he basically said, in no uncertain words, the city's broke?
No. Why should I be? In 2019, all these things were fleshed out by my office, which is to say me, since the City Council and the Comptroller's office did not want to fund the Office of the Inspector General, because they obviously did not want any oversight. And they got what they wanted. The state controller did precisely nothing, even though he was asked to intervene on several occasions, and the district attorney's office at the time did nothing. And for that matter, the United States Attorney's Office did nothing in terms of investigating, although in fairness to them, there has to be a federal angle, and school district taxes, money's being siphoned off, or at least not going to where they're supposed to go, and the increasing opacity, I guess we can call it, of the city's munis system, which tracked expenses and payments, thanks to the then city controller, who destroyed that whole system intentionally, as far as we could tell. All this could have been prevented had it been addressed in early 2019, when it was brought screamingly to the attention of those agencies and entities that could and should have intervened but sat on their hands.
And that's a question, like what made them decide to sit, still or stand back and do nothing? I mean, it's puzzling, because when I look around and I see different news clips of, stories out in the universe. We have stories about the College of New Rochelle, where after issues were flagged and raised, actions were and inquiries were launched, and then all of a sudden all of the spinning plates started to fall down, and the previous controller of the College of New Rochelle was held accountable. And that technically wasn't anything different than what has happened in Mount Vernon, which is where I'm curious.
Well, the short answer is I don't know. I don't have any particular insight into anyone's thinking. But the person who, in my view, the hatchet man, who went after you.
Yeah.
And it's strange, because the city controller who presided, for the most part, over this mess, and her predecessor, are no longer city officials. So there's no reason that going after either or both of them would disrupt anything in the city. It would bring many things to light, and it's quite possible that the political ramifications play a part in judging whether to proceed or not. For all we know, I should point out, there's an intense grand jury investigation, which is secret. I see no evidence of that, but we can't foreclose that possibility. But it's more than passing strange that nothing's happened. except that if the matters were investigated, there would be one big political problem, and that problem, in a word, would be that everything that you were saying, all the flags, red flags you were raising, all the requests for intervention, which were just dismissed as politics, conveniently turned out all to be true. And sadly, once again, it's the people of Mount Vernon who suffer the brunt of the political cowardice of those people who are supposed to be protecting their interests.
So in a couple words, retaliation, or one word, retaliation for political retaliation for questioning power that was benefiting from the situation in Mount Vernon. And that seems to be the case. And I just want to pull up for people watching online and for those listening, an audit was done by State Comptroller Darren Morton, but it was released in January of 22. And it basically went over Mount Vernon's operational and oversight failures that Mr. Knapp is detailing and discussing right now. And it just seems to be a bit strange that, the city would, not the city, the state would simply ignore issues related to Mount Vernon's finances for so many years to all of a sudden just pretend that everything is fine after a person like myself, me, questioned and former Inspector General Knapp questioned, what's really going on with Mount Vernon's money? Why is it so difficult? Why is it so mysterious and secret? And what we believe to be being mismanaged by the former controller, causing all sorts of problems. It just seems to be that the focus always was on, I guess, the messenger, not necessarily the message. So I just want to read, I guess, some of the key findings from Comptroller Napoli's report that, again, to me seemed to be very serious, and it is, and it was, and it remains serious, but no action's been taken. 88 claims totaling more than $1.8 million were not paid in a timely manner. 60 claims totaling $460,000 not paid for essential services and infrastructure. The city lacked adequate policies and procedures to ensure claims were properly authorized. Now, that's not entirely true. We had a system in place. It was dismantled, deliberately dismantled by the former controllers. So why are they now saying, oh, you lack this stuff? No, we had it. And when it was being dismantled, we said, hey, can you please step in and take a look at this? And instead of looking at the real problems, money's disappearing, millions of dollars disappearing, we got attacked instead. And I'm just trying to figure out also here, it says made 25, the former controller made 25 unauthorized electronic disbursements and 3 withdrawals totaling 16 million, most of which circumvented the mayor's required countersignature on city checks. Now, can anybody please, if that's listening, if you want to call in and just comment on this, feel free to join us after the break. Don't change that dial. We're going to dive more into what happened here with Mount Vernon's finances with former Mayor Thomas and Inspector General Knapp. Hey, this just hurts so much to discuss. I mean, like, oh my goodness, like I'm looking at this report and it's just like,
Well, it's basically my report with the numbers quadrupled because of the passage of time.
you know,
Between COVID-19 and restrictions in China, supply chain problems, and Tesla's suspended experts a sequential decline in film profit over a year. Now it's estimated that supplier better be heard on $16 million in February. That's up from 12 million compared to last year's price. With all of the mistakes of 19 and 6
must remind people that the reason why this report was provided by Comptroller Morton is because of change of charter, requiring, the controller to speak up legally. And I think that's something that people need to know here.
Morton always struck me as a good guy, though.
Yeah.
Whether he can buck the politics is the question.
Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Ongoing hiring, the picture free column, gets a text, shelter to 90. There's no obligation or purchase required. Again, that's shelter to 90.
This is almost a fires and savvy manager from Clean Knowing County. No, but then you think about it. And I said, West Jessica in the world to get Trump in broke up. Oh, yeah.
That's one treasure.
What's that?
One hopes, but maybe, that's just me looking at all the possibilities, no matter how unlikely. But it would be nice. Find Darren's not the guy to do it.
No, I don't think so. I think, his focus was politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's, me first, how do I get ahead?
Yep. And that's what it got him.
The use his cohort bills or
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. It's an action-packed conversation today on what happened here on WVOX, a Whitney Global Media Station. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to What Happened Here, and we're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. on your AM dial. That's 1460 or worldwide at WVOX.com. If you'd like to call in and join the discussion or ask questions, the phone number is 914-636-0110. Again, that phone number is 914-636-0110. Now, the question we are asking with our special guest, Charlie Knapp. Charles Knapp is a former AUSA, former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney, but also a former Mount Vernon Inspector General. He's looked extensively at the issue of Mount Vernon's money problems. And we have questions about why is Mount Vernon's money so funny? Is the city broke? Why is the city broke? It's the city with the highest taxes in Westchester County, and the city arguably the highest taxes in the country on a per capita basis. So the question is, what is going on with Mount Vernon's money? Why are things so bad? And when you step back and look at the presentation by the new Comptroller Darren Morton, he details a picture that seems to be reflective of, if not, the report presented by Inspector General Knapp, but as Knapp put it, quadrupled. All the problems that were pointed out back in 2019, 2018 were simply ignored by New York State. And now we have a scenario where the problems have really gotten extremely worse. And the city has raised taxes 30%. The current administration has what's the word I'm looking for? Raised salaries and added positions. But now we have a scenario where everything seems to be kind of out of whack. The streets are not being cleaned. We have residents whose homes are being flooded whenever it rains, and homeowners are paying the highest taxes but yet not getting any services. So how can Mount Vernon get control of its money? Well, the first bit is, when I was leaving office, I changed the city charter. I required and I asked the public to vote on changing the city's charter to require the controller to have public reports and transparency. And this report by Comptroller Morton is one of the fulfillments of that law. And for the past few years, the city council and the current administration ignored holding the former controller, Deborah Reynolds, to any type of accountability in terms of making her provide these public presentations, which is required by Mount Vernon's law as per our charter. And now we are starting to get an inside look as to what the problems are. So, Mr. Knapp, what do you think about the steps now being taken to kind of discuss Mount Vernon's financial predicament with the new controller laying out that there are some real liabilities that the city faces?
Well, what we learn is, once again, the lesson that actions have consequences, and when you're asleep at the switch, catastrophe is generally the result. The way I look at it is, we've now had two reports, one by State Comptroller DiNapoli and the second one recently by the City Comptroller Morton. And if either of them had any guts, the title of each should have been "Rich Was Right, Sorry Mount Vernon," volumes 1 and 2. Because, as you pointed out, all the things that they identify were things that I identified with no staff, using my own investigatory devices, back in February, March, and April of 2019. The numbers obviously are different. They're orders of magnitude higher because they just didn't want to get involved. Not City Comptroller Morton, he was not around as the controller at the time, but as one of your commissioners, he was on the receiving end of this financial catastrophe in the making, and it wasn't exactly slow rolling either. But to your point, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and if the powers that be, who are supposed to look after everyone's best interests, refuse to act, then the city charter at least stands there as the guidebook on what people are entitled to see. And Comptroller Morton should be applauded for following the charter, which is more than his predecessor ever did. And unfortunately, the people of Mount Vernon are just having confirmed everything that you were warning them of years ago. And there are two things that need to happen. One is that, of course, Mount Vernon's finances have to be reorganized. You have to have legitimate budgets. Maybe you need more input from the outside. And you need a strong audit group unrelated to the city, unrelated to Westchester County, which is one thing you tried to have happen back in 2019, and you were blocked by the city council, who wanted the old audit group that they controlled, as far as we could tell, in there. But even if they didn't control them, you don't have the same audit people for more than 5 years. That's just not considered best practices. You need new eyes. So perhaps a little bit of that. But you also have to show the people that those responsible for this gross mismanagement of funds are held accountable in some way, just like one of the school superintendent, I think it was in New Rochelle, that you mentioned. You got to face the music. If it's just a free pass, or let's not revisit the past, then there is very little incentive, when push comes to shove, for people to take shortcuts or to act potentially with criminal intent if there's never going to be a downside. It's all a matter of incentives, and you have to have the right ones in place.
Well, don't change that dial. We're going to talk about Mount Vernon. We're going to talk about the finances. We're going to talk about, concerns about corruption. Don't change that dial. Listen to WVOX with Global Media Station. So, for everybody out there listening, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Make sure you share this conversation with your friends and your family. It's important, because this is what happens when you go to make change. You get attacked, and the sacrifice for, someone that's greedy or corrupt benefiting from a bad situation. The sacrifice is often something good. And, that good in this part was me sacrificing my political career for the most part, putting everything on the line to finally get Mount Vernon to get out of the cesspool that it has been stuck in for so many years. But with respect to with respect to, the stuff that we're talking about. This is just textbook, political retaliation for asking questions about millions of dollars that's literally missing and being mishandled, and the messenger about, that problem being attacked because they asked the question about why is this way? We should have it different and it should be better. And as you can see, Mount Vernon has suffered tremendously by having, I would say, the foxes watching the hen house. Because every time you wake up and ask a question, how come one of my friends are moving, or why is this, pothole getting bigger, or why did the street turn into a river when it was a light rain, and now my basement is flooded again for the fifth or sixth time, this month. And this is something that, it's not just a function of climate change, but it's really a function of, poor policy, poor management, poor politics, straight, in my opinion, corruption that has harmed Mount Vernon for so many years. The neglect has really rotted at its foundations. And when we started cleaning it up, we got attacked for cleaning it up. But that's okay. We're gonna endure those attacks. And as you can see, the truth has not changed, and it continues to, ring true that not only was I right, but they were dead wrong in doing everything that they did to stop us from trying to make the changes that need to be made in Mount Vernon. So nonetheless, when we come back from break, I'm going to ask some questions about, what next, and then I'm going to revisit some of the issues that are flagged in Comptroller Morton's report, where he points out that, there are liabilities to pay. And I just remind everybody that the Department of Justice is investigating Mount Vernon, its police department, for its handling of evidence. But we'll talk more about that when we get back from break. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX, a Whitney Global media station, and you're listening to what happened here with Mount Vernon's money. What is going on? Is the city broke? It has the highest taxes. We pay too much in taxes, no matter where you are. But to be told that the city has no money is not just funny, it's dead wrong. We are asking the questions. You can call in with questions. We will answer at 914-636-0110, 914-636-0110. And our guest today is former AUSA of the Eastern District, former Manhattan ADA, who also served as Inspector General of the City of Mount Vernon, Charlie Knapp. Charles has extensively covered the issue of the Comptroller and the problems in that office, and the real issues, the systemic issues that have failed Mount Vernon over the years, that have resulted in the current situation that Comptroller Morton, the new Comptroller Morton, has laid out last week when he detailed Mount Vernon's tenuous financial situation. And, as we were talking between break, I was, talking about how there are liabilities listed in Comptroller Morton's report. Some of those liabilities are actually assets, like the fire department, who has not been paid what they're due. The fire department could be doing more enforcement around quality of life. They could be generating revenue, but also focusing on safety, fire safety, public safety, and making sure that the city is in a safer position because of the work that they're doing. But instead of trying to build out the fire department, use available resources from different grants or even partnerships with different municipalities in the state, this administration has done nothing but complain that the fire department is getting, a cost of living increase on top of them not, using the fire department to its fullest potential to provide public safety. But instead, we've seen this even with the police department recently. It's been clear that the police department was not defunded, it was dismantled. The police department, however, has been significantly harmed, injured, so many retirements. It's been dismantled by this administration, and I'm deeply concerned because now after the Comptroller's report about the problem with pay raises, adding positions, and money problems. The administration is hiring more people and giving them more pay bumps to do work that people in City Hall should be doing. So it's really a tricky situation that we'll touch upon. But I'm just curious about, where do we go from here? Because when you look at Comptroller Morton's report, again, it talks about investments needed in technology, and when you look back at Mount Vernon and go to 2018, we had the technology systems in place. We had an electronic system in place that tracked the finances of the city, and it was dismantled by the previous controller, and she went back to paper and pencil and told everybody she didn't care, and when money started literally missing and checks were not being cashed for transactions related to real estate, you ask the question of how come nobody intervened? I mean, think about real estate. It's a very important business. It's a huge, industry, and yet, real estate transactions going back to 2017, 18 were not properly processed, and that causes deals to collapse. And it creates all sorts of liabilities, and over the years, the problem not only gotten worse. We have mountains of zombie properties in Mount Vernon just sitting there taking monies out of the tax roll. And even though we were trying to activate them, you get the situation where, you have an active opposition that's trying to stop anything and everything that would bring transparency to the finances. But now, with 2 audits later, as Inspector General pointed out, Rich was right, Volume 1 and 2, what do we do? Now that we know that that there was a big lie woven, vortex of deception that, descended upon Mount Vernon because of the financial mismanagement that was going on. What type of accountability will be held? I kind of feel like the January 6th committee in a sense where, you're raising all these points, pointing out all these problems, showing how things are connected, but yet law enforcement that could do something chooses to do nothing. So I don't know, what's going on and why Mount Vernon's finances. Is it because they're all Democrats in Mount Vernon and they're Democrats up and down the line that just don't want to attack the real problem with Democrats? Or is it something deeper? Is it something bigger? Is it something that's darker than we can ever imagine? I mean, the light is on, the spotlight's on, and yet millions of dollars in Mount Vernon remain unaccounted for, and the taxpayers continue to suffer. Me being one of them. What do you think?
Well, the way I look at it is Mount Vernon has a lot of professional politicians who double as amateur managers. When you need professional managers, you need people with a vision, you need people with the priorities that reflect those of the people of Mount Vernon. And I just don't see that. That wasn't there with just a few exceptions, basically outsiders like you. And instead of focusing on Mount Vernon, they all focused on you to try to remove you. And again, as I said, the people suffered. What they need are, and what we tried to get actually back then, is a top to bottom audit by a reputable outside firm, because that's the only way, for starters, that Moody's and S&P and all the others are going to restore not just a credit rating to the city, but one that the city can live with. You don't need, Mount Vernon to get back as a junk bond kind of investment. You need it to have a B or higher, just to compete for the monies in the financial markets. So that, I think, would be one thing they need to consider. Another thing is they have to prioritize. The health and safety of the people of Mount Vernon should be number one. Restoring the infrastructure, which is part and parcel of health and safety, certainly, has to be in the mix. So where is their plan? They've been around for a couple of years. This is not a brand new administration. And I really haven't seen any vision for Mount Vernon. Seen a lot of complaints, as you've mentioned. It's always the other person's fault. It's all a distraction. Look over there. Don't look at me. Blame him. Don't ask anything of me. Not my fault. And at the end of the day, as you say, where did all those tax dollars go? They didn't. It's not like the Secret Service texts that just disappear into thin air. that money went somewhere, and it's up to the city controller to find it, or the state controller to have a real investigation. Possibly the state attorney general, Tish James, look into it criminally, or the local DA. If she wants to make a difference, which was um, her campaign strategy, this is her chance. And as I said, maybe she is, and we just don't know, but you would think there'd be a subpoena or something floating around that other people would have known about by now.
Now, if you hear some background noise, that's the wind blowing in, because the wind is obviously changing direction, making sure that we get back toward truth and fact. And the fact is, we have a caller on the line. Caller, thank you for calling in. You're on What Happened Here. Thank you. Thank you for calling in, Vince.
And I'm sure one of the shares that my ridiculous it is that the ongoing problems that I don't have because the two but then I have the tax problem with people like that. But very, but then I go to it. When I competition, then I think that's right for me to push it. But I think so I feel very good something for several years.
I think, you have a point. And your point about Mount Vernon being only Democrats, and that was one of the points that I made earlier. I do believe that contributed to the institutional rot, below Mount Vernon. It's rotting. The foundations are rotting, and they need to be fixed and replaced. And I do think that once upon a time, when Mount Vernon did switch from red to blue, there were genuine good intents. But over time, people got comfortable, people got greedy, and people got lazy. And I think a combination of those things contributed to people at higher levels throughout government to basically say, oh, we're not going to look at this, we're going to leave it alone. We need that vote at some point in time, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the politics took priority over the people. And it's my hope that the people continue to respond and vote in every single election, letting the politicians know that they're not going to be silent. They're going to stand up, and they're going to take back, their community from the apathy that has really destroyed the community. And sure. Oh yes, I do. And I'll jump into that a little bit after the break, but I'll tell you, why are they running? Why are they leaving? Thank you. Don't change it down. Listen to What Happened Here.
Yeah, the cool wind at our backs.
Yeah. It's finally the winter. It's getting into our sails.
Yeah, one hopes.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't realize that they let that on. I guess it'll automatically turn on or off. Hey guys, thank you for joining online. If you got questions or comments, please let us know. We are talking about Mount Vernon's finances. How can the city be so taxed, but then be broke? What's going on with Mount Vernon's money? Why is it so funny? Why is it a mystery? In my opinion, the conspiracy is reality.
This conspiracy.
Yeah.
Not just anyone.
Not just anyone, this conspiracy.
Well, it's going to be a function like anything else. If someone's going to step up
Yeah.
and look for it, find it, get it back.
I think, based on what I'm seeing,
That person could be governor who's done that cleanup.
well, that's what they were worried about.
Well,
But
yeah,
I will say that there is I think what they're positioned in the city for is somewhat something to your point about junk bond status. the best way to move it from junk bond status is they're gonna basically wave a magic wand and say the period between 2015 and 2020 are now in a magic box. So we're gonna take that box and it didn't happen. We're gonna drop it into the ocean, just like they did in Laden. And you know, he needs to be dropped in the ocean somewhere. But I'm just saying, I'll talk about the guaranteed income thing right now. In brief, my view of the guaranteed income is, you know, they should have more structure around it. They should have first tax relief for the homeowners who's paying for all the nonsense. They should be cutting taxes. They're sending checks to homeowners. They're not doing that. And instead of teaching people how to fish, they're giving fish away. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think that there should be some kind of attachment to this program, not just take $500 and run. I think that program in and of itself is going to be ripe for corruption because who picks the 200? How are the 200 people, selected? And when you think about the 200, you have to ask yourself, are they going to be all friends of the mayor? And if it is, are they going to be given kickbacks under the table? Those are questions you have to ask. And there are no systems in place to guarantee that that will not happen. And that's why I'm like, look, when it comes to money, you got to be, transparent because you have to, earn what you keep. But the problem remains Mount Vernon is this place where it's all about political promises that get broken and they want to keep the drama. And we have a big drama queen inside City Hall right now raising more and more drama. What's up, Rasta, man? I owe you something. I know I got to get up with you. But I can only tell you guys that we can have a lot better situation. We just got to get control of our politics, which we're almost in place to do. But then we also have to make sure that I got you, Rusty. I got you. But we have to really take a hard look at taking a hard stance against the mediocrity and the circus that's inhabiting our city government. We gotta get that circus out of town. It's a terrible one. It's a bad trick, and we were all duped into believing a big lie when the real problem is what Mount Vernon's finances that has been holding us back and harming us. We're coming back from break, and we're gonna talk some more. Here we go.
And now with Rick Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back. You're listening to WVOX, a Whitney Global Media Station. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to What Happened Here with Mount Vernon's Finances. And this is our final segment before the show wraps up. And if you want to call in and ask questions, the phone number is 914-636-0110. Our special guest is Charles Knapp, former AUSA of the Eastern District, former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney, and he also served as Inspector General in the City of Mount Vernon. We're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking different questions, but this week's question is Mount Vernon's finances. And before we went to break, we were asked, what do I think about the Mount Vernon School Board situation? And I will tell you, the chaos that the news wrote about was really political sour grapes, in my very strong opinion. Because when you go back in time, and anybody out there that's listening, please Google Comptroller DiNapoli audit Mount Vernon School District 2018 or 2017. And you'll see that the audits that he put out in those years showed fiscal mismanagement involving at least $13 million vanishing from the $110 million bond borrow that I helped pass. And I was very upset when I saw and learned in real time that, wait a minute, money's just missing here, money's missing there. This one contract administrator spent close to $1 million without any policies or procedures being followed. He just spent close to $1 million. There's a room inside one of the school buildings that was built out secretly, and it cost close to $300,000 for this one small room. It's like, come on, ridiculous. But yet, even though we tried to bring it to the attention of the news dismissed it and only focused on the drama. And that is exactly what happened again with the resignation of these members that are claiming that, oh, it's political this and political that. No, there are kids that are not being served. And I was talking to a mother the other night that has 2 autistic children in the school district. And you know what they've done for the past few years? And I was at Pennington. My kids went to Pennington. Her kids would they would sit in an office all day, and the mother would be told they're being taught when they were not. There was no special education being taught at the schools. And you have kids that are literally falling behind, going ahead in grades when they're really trapped in the 3rd grade. It is a terrible situation. And Mount Vernon School District was sued for this. They lost a federal lawsuit on, mismanaging special education. And the moment the auditors leave from the federal government, back comes the mismanagement. And in comes now a new administration that is trying to get it right, asking the real questions, doing the real work. And now it's political chaos. No, it's called accountability. So just stay tuned, everybody. I know a lot more is going to come out. I've been following this for years, as you can see, even with Mount Vernon, with his latest report. And I'm speaking as a homeowner, a father, and a person that's just simply frustrated that, people let us down. Our own people let us down. But we need our own people, more people to get involved, to get off, to get up, stand up and fight for their rights, because that's what we need to do as a community. We're not going to have the place that we once called home be home if we allow the rats to keep eating the cheese. We have to keep moving the cheese around to make sure that we move forward, not get stuck in the past. In the past, there are good things about the past, but the problem is it can't be our future. All these past political problems, all the past greed, past corruption, if there is a way to put it in a box and push it aside and say, fine, leave it there, leave it behind, let's do that. But what I do know is that I don't see that happening with this current administration. I don't see the vision. I know that I left behind a capital plan for the city that could really energize the economy. But when I look around and see the building department not issuing permits, and I see store after store closing, it's not just a function of the internet. It's a function of City Hall not doing its job to process paperwork that it's supposed to process. So Charlie, in our final minutes of the show, I know I went a little off topic on the education end, but it ties into the city because in Morton's report, it shows that, as we pointed out, the comptroller of Mount Vernon, the former comptroller, withheld millions of dollars of school district money, depriving our children of education. And, that should qualify for what the federal government did with the College of New Rochelle when they came in and said, hey, you mismanage all these monies. Even on a pattern and practice basis, there has to be some kind of action that the federal government could take, because I just don't see what any law enforcement would do because of the politics in this region. I'm hoping that there would be accountability on the previous controllers. I would hope that they would finally just say, you know what, there were bad people throughout the state that really attacked you and your administration and the people that work for your administration, Mayor Thomas. A simple apology would be nice, but I don't think we're ever going to get that. But I do hope that they do at least hold some people accountable, because taxes went up 30%, and taxes are going to go up again. And the problems we see right now, they're only getting worse. So let's see what's going to happen. But what do you think about this situation?
Well, it's, I don't want to beat the same drum all the time, but I find I have to. We live in a democracy. And if you don't vote, if you don't educate yourself on the issues, you will get the government you deserve. And unfortunately, Mount Vernon, for far too long, with a very small, shiny period when you were mayor, got the government it deserved because it just wasn't sufficiently interested in the goings-on in City Hall. Bill Belichick, even though he snubbed the Jets years ago, he still does a couple of things right. And his main mantra to his team is, do your job. And looking at Mount Vernon, what that means is the mayor, the city council, and the city controller have to look forward. They have to have a plan. They have to have a vision that serves the people of Mount Vernon. The state controller has a job to do, as does law enforcement. It is separate. It is to make the people who took money, who failed at their jobs, to be held accountable. the politics in Westchester are such that hasn't really been happening. And that's where the people can come in. They should be telling Mimi Roca and Tish James and Mr. DiNapoli, Tom DiNapoli, that they want their active intervention. When we tried, it wasn't that we did not get a response from the Comptroller or the State Attorney General. We got a response. I got a response. And the response was, I'm not interested. We're going after Mr. Thomas. Everything else falls by the wayside. DiNapoli's office told me flat out the reason that they weren't going to be looking into anything in the city was because there was litigation going on, which, I'm an attorney. I know BS when I see it. And that was one of those distractions that, don't look at what I'm doing, look over there. And the people of Mount Vernon have to stop following the finger pointing, which redirects from where the real action is. They need, and they are smart enough to know what was going on. If anyone in Mount Vernon had been told what I was told, they would have come to the same conclusion I did, because it's not rocket science, it's common sense. And everybody has loads of common sense. You just have to tap into it. You have to trust yourself. But people of Mount Vernon, you have to get organized if you want results. Otherwise, your voice is not going to be heard.
And that's one of the things that I wanted people to hear and absorb is that, look, I recognize that history is full of examples of bad things happening to good people. And the one thing I never expected was the agencies that have the responsibility and the obligation to help in a situation like we described, where monies were missing, where the city and the people were being hurt. I never expected that the state would turn its back on Mount Vernon, but it did. And now, as homeowners are continuing to suffer, the question is, what now? What are we going to do? I think the answer in its simplest form is everybody, we have to keep at it. We have to endure. We have to keep pushing and demanding that action be taken, not just by the state, but by us, each other. While it may seem, exhausting, it is exhausting, but we have to endure the pain, because the pain will lead to a better situation in Mount Vernon. It will lead to prosperity, because we can unlock the potential. We just have to fight more for it. And I want to remind everybody about RIPE. RIPE, they beat, Nigel beat Bobby Flay in a cook-off, and his business burned down right during the beginning of the pandemic. Can you believe that RIPE barely got its building permit and it's still struggling to get its permits approved? This is a business that brought thousands of people to Mount Vernon on a weekly basis, even though, they don't have enough parking in the area, and I was working on that, as well as anyway, I'm going to leave that right there for now. But the point is, when you have a dysfunctional city hall, you hurt jobs, you hurt people, you hurt businesses. And our businesses should be, in abundance, not in scarcity, not facing extinction because City Hall wants to continue to play politics, especially hide and seek with our money. We're not going to let this go. We're going to keep asking the tough questions. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our guest, Charles Knapp, for sticking with us and asking these tough questions. We're going to be back next week, Wednesday. We'll maybe dive back into this a little bit, but don't change that dial anyway. You listen to WVOX. We'll see you next week on What Happened Here.